Hello everyone, welcome in, welcome in. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're doing a special series, Blast from the Past. We're going to take a look at a movie to see if it still holds up to the standards of today. Is it still watchable? Is this something to put on the must-see list if you haven't already? This is one that I've seen a couple times and I really was excited to revisit it and it did not disappoint. The movie I'm speaking of is 30 Days of Night. Just so you know, there will be spoilers along the way, so be mindful if you haven't seen this. Go watch it first, because it's worth the watch. What are you waiting for? And then come back and see the review. 30 Days of Night is a vampire horror movie that takes place in the town of Barrow, Alaska. This town goes through 1 month, 30 days of no sun. This is a vampire's wet dream, or fang. They're fang bang, right? Setting the stage for a bloodbath. It's an absolute feeding frenzy for vampires, and they are ready to come in, swoop in, and take a bite. This movie came out in 2007, so it is 17 years later. And let me tell you, vampires have been center stage since then. We have seen vampires every which way possible. They are now mainstream in the media. After this movie, we had shows like True Blood, we had the Twilight series, we had Vampire Diaries, we had all different sorts and types of vampires. The vampires in this movie absolutely are fear-provoking monsters. This is the type of monster vampire that goes bump in the night that makes you shake in your boots and want to hide under the covers. They are grotesque. They are teethy. They have their own language that they call out to each other, and they are of like a hive mentality where there is a leader vampire that seems to be in charge of the others, and they are on a killing spree in this town. This movie's rated R. There are guts, there's gore, there's blood, there's language, there's disturbing images, and there are images and situations that really poke at your heartstrings. I know the first time I watched this movie, I don't think it affected me as much as it did now. I'm a parent now, but even then, like, I was putting myself in the place, in the actual shoes of the sheriff that we meet. And he's one that really goes through the grunt of having to step up, take charge, and fight back, as well as keep people safe. And he goes on an emotional roller coaster ride. It is crazy. It's really so much trauma that he's going through, as well as everyone in this town. It is something that they are up against that is utterly scary. Scary in a way that is so unnerving just by the reality of the circumstances of not being able to see the sun for 30 days. This movie's 1 hour and 53 minutes, and the pace is nice. It really does pull you in. You get introduced to a bunch of characters in a quick amount of time, but you get pieces of information about them, and you get to really learn who they are enough that you're invested and care about the characters and the town. And also, there is gore and guts and fear and the unknown of wondering what is going to resolve along the way. So it really is that sweet spot as far as movies go, under the 2 hour mark and not too long where you get bored at all along the way. This is directed by David Slade, and he also directed the Twilight Saga Eclipse as well as Hard Candy. I personally believe that he really outdid himself on this one. He brings the fear. He brings the vampire that I want to see when I'm going to see a movie. I feel as though the Twilight movies and the Vampire Diaries and just different beautification of the vampire in general, even the True Blood series, that really made them more human-like and more lovable, made them have more of their humanity. That's not what I want to see when I'm watching the vampires. I want to see them out for carnage, out for blood. They drink blood, they prey on humans. That's what we want to see. Not this, I need to eat you, but I don't want to dynamic. No, they want to drink us. They want to suck us dry. That's what we're dealing with here, people. Yes, don't fool yourselves. That's what they are. We get introduced to the main character, Sheriff Eben Olsen, played by Josh Hartnett, right away. He is struggling to make sense of some comm radios that got burnt up, and he is the sheriff of this small town. He and another law enforcement officer, his best friend, Billy, are out trying to put the pieces together of what they're seeing, as well as grappling with the fact that it's the last day of light. They are not going to be able to see the sun again for 30 long days. Much of the town is getting out of Dodge. They do not want to stick around, but there's 100+ people that will be remaining. As the story unfolds and we get to meet Sheriff Olsen a little bit more, we see his struggle, how he has a wife that he's estranged with at the moment. She came into town, she's only there for the day, and she's trying to get the heck out of Dodge. She's a fire marshal and is just wrapping up some things work-wise. Now, she gets into a little bit of a fender bender and is now stuck calling her ex. She calls asking for assistance to get to the airport because she's trying to make her flight before she's stuck in town for the 30 days. Well, we know what happens here. Of course she's going to be stuck in town. No shocker there. So she ends up stuck in town as well with the remaining other 100+ residents. 30 Days of Night is based off of a comic book series by the same name. I have not read the comic books, but I am going to look into doing that because I can only imagine that they are amazing based on how much I love and enjoy this movie. I do feel as though this director really had some shining stars delivered to him as far as storylines go. So there's little things that start going wrong bit by bit that end up adding to there's something more. What are we not seeing? What's really going on as daylight quickly disappears? Very quickly we get introduced to the plot. There's things that start to go wrong. We have an entire sled team of dogs that get taken out by the vampires. There's just carnage left. So the sheriff goes to try to investigate further and talk to the owners, a couple, and they're upset, frustrated, and saying, I'm going to kill whoever did this, and rightfully so. Very quickly, we come to realize that there is something dire happening in this town, and once the sun sets, the vampires start to come out and prey on the people in the town. We first go back to the couple that lost their dogs, and they end up losing more than their dogs. The woman is pulled right out of a window by one of the vampires that comes in. You have the husband trying to grab a hold and save her as she's being pulled to her demise, to her death underneath their home. He's struggling to get her, and we cut away knowing that they have met their doom. Now, this really sat with me because I'm like, not only did they lose their dogs, are struggling with that loss, are trying to make sense of having 30 days of night now that they have to go through, and just dealing with that trauma. Now, in the split second, they're dealing with what the hell is going on in additional trauma. And it is mind-blowing, and I really connected in a way that I didn't when I first watched the film. Yes, when I watched the film years ago when it first came out, I loved it. I thought it was great. It's always been in the back of my mind as being one of my absolute favorite vampire movies. And let me tell you, on the second watch, it does not disappoint. But it hit me on a different level. And I don't know if it's because I'm older and I've had more life experience now, but it really got me. It got me in a way where I was like, oh, I didn't know there was so much gore, and I didn't think there was all this gruesomeness. Man, it does not disappoint. It doesn't let you down. The terror is there. The horror is there. But man, that emotional kick in the heart is there, and it definitely delivers on the fear factor and on the making you feel as though you're really going through this turmoil with them. There's a stranger that comes into the town, and he is arrested by this dynamic duo heartthrob team that are estranged at the moment. And he starts the warnings of, you're all going to die. Everyone's going to die. There's nothing you can do. You can't run. You can't hide. And it's kind of one where everybody's brushing him off, but also because of everything that's been going on just in the last couple hours, everyone's a little unnerved and wondering if maybe there's something more there. And this stranger is what we would call a familiar or a friendly to the vampires. He is hoping that because he's done everything that they asked of him, that he will become one of them. The vampires, the teethy, black-eyed, gruesome, pale-skinned monsters that drink blood to survive and can only come out in the shadows of darkness, we get introduced to them in full vampire form. They have a pack mentality and they are on the hunt. Leaving no rock unturned to find their prey, they will hunt down and kill every human in this town. They have 30 days to do it, and they like to play with their food. Danny Houston plays the head vampire, the master vampire in 30 Days of Night, and his name is Marlowe. It sounds an awful lot like Barlow from the Stephen King's book Salem's Lot, but who's keeping tabs at this point? Either way, they are scary, disturbing, and grotesque. He does an absolutely phenomenal job showing the detachment from reality that the vampire has. In this movie specifically, they just really are superior. They have an essence. It's not like they're saying it because they speak a different language, but they have an essence about them that is just showing like we are superior beings. Yes, we hide in the shadows, but that's because we don't want to be hunted by you. The people are food, peasants. I just feel as though we are on the bottom of the food chain in their mindset. And he does a great job at looking at people and kind of cocking his head. And you can see the thought process, even with the darkened eyes, of just thinking, how are they so stupid? How do they continuously fall for everything that we put into their minds? Especially the stranger that they use to get things, their familiars that they use to get things done for them during the daylight hours. And it's just like the thought process of time and time again, and they just don't get it. No real loss here. They are food. This movie puts this entire town through a roller coaster ride of emotions. And yes, there is no shortage of gruesome deaths. One of my most favorite scenes is that first night of darkness. And everyone's trying to make sense of what's going on. And you have people hiding and people running and people just out in the street trying to put pieces together, and the next thing you know, it is just this full-blown feeding frenzy of vampire on people, attack of carnage and blood and gore everywhere. And there's an aerial pan over, and this was like before I think they even really had drones. I mean, this is years ago, and I'm sure they did, but not to the extent that we have today. And you're just panning over and seeing the snow. So the blood and the snow is just so contrasting. And there's screaming and vampires and gore and killing everywhere you look. And it just completely immersifies the viewer. And then not only that, you think it's going to end and it just keeps going. It keeps going. And it is still to this day one of my favorite scenes in a horror movie. I absolutely love it, enjoy it. And if you haven't seen it, you got to see this one. It is good. So if you told me that tomorrow the sun's going to set and you won't see it again for 30 days, that alone to me is scary enough. That alone is a horror movie for me. Now you add vampires to the mix, bloodthirsty, carnage-seeking vampires, and man, oh man, do we have one hell of a horror movie. Throw in Josh Hartnett and I'm getting the popcorn out. Pop, pop, pop. Woo! The vampires in this did remind me a little bit of the movie Abigail that came out this year with that like monster vampire feel. And I'm thinking of like her maker, her father in that movie. If you saw it, it feels like he would be one of the head vampires. So it has that, like we lurk in the shadows. We choose our prey wisely, we pick and choose where we go, and then we leave the town completely destroyed after leaving so that there's no survivors to tell the tale. They want to stay hidden, they want to stay in the shadows, but they want their carnage, their blood, their gore. They are thirsty, they are hungry, and they want more. Stella Olsen, played by Melissa George, was not able to make it out of the town. So now she is teaming up with Eben Olsen, her husband, and they are thrown into situations where they must work together. And they do make a good team. Eben's brother works at the jail as well as his grandmother. It's an all-family affair at the jail. Sadly, Granny is one of the first to get it, but that's a blessing in disguise because at least it's on day one. Anyone who's hanging on to life gets used to try to trickle out other survivors. They send out the weak, the innocent, those most likely to pull at the heartstrings of people bunkering down, sheltering down to try to get them to come out and give up the rest of the group. That's exactly what these filthy vampire creatures do to provoke the fear and just continue to try to manipulate those survivors. Sheriff Olson finds out quickly what he's made of. He has to step up, he has to take charge, he has to process through what these creatures are, and he also gets forced to do what's hard and what's difficult and what others might not. He's trying to help keep everyone alive for the month. He has to chop off heads of friends. There's his friend Billy, who he worked very closely with. Billy, instead of allowing his family to get eaten by the vampires or to even try to make it through, he decides to murder, death, suicide, only he misses when he goes to shoot himself and then just sits there with his dead child and wife for however many days of night. He then dies a very gruesome death, so that comes back around. But it just really shows how dark things get. How very, very dark things get during times of absolute despair and darkness. While Eben is out investigating the surrounding area, he hears calls to him. It is the individual, the male, who lost his dogs and his wife and is now barricading himself underneath his home. Evan believes he's saving him and quickly learns that he is there, but also not there. He unfortunately had been bitten by one of the vampires and it turned him. Now, we realize it's a process. The turning process takes time. It's not instantaneously. They feel a thirst for blood, but still remain themselves for a little bit. Eben realizes that he's going to have to take action if he wants to survive, and this is the first time we see him really have to dig deep and pull out an axe and keep swinging until that head comes off. There's so many deaths that happen, and there's deaths that happen to the characters that they're witnessing that really anyone that makes it out alive is not coming back from this trauma. It is extremely detrimental, soul-provoking pain, misery, despair. And at the end, it is Sheriff Olson that has to step up and be the hero once again. Stella has gotten herself trapped underneath a vehicle with a child from the town that was used as bait. She took the bait and now she's stuck and trapped. Vampires are setting the town on fire. So it's either run and get killed by the vampires or stay hidden and get burned. Sheriff Olson is not taking this lying down and he decides to inject himself with vampire blood, hoping that he will remain himself long enough before turning to fight off the vampire master and save his estranged wife and the rest of the town. Current count 5. Eben injects himself with this vampire blood and is able to retain a good amount of his humanity, who he is, while getting some of the perks like strength that goes along with becoming a vampire. So we see him walk out and pretty much save the night for his beloved. He steps up to the main vampire Marlowe and ends up defeating him with a punch right through his head, ripping out. Yeah, I mean, it's a little corny, it's a little cheesy, but he's stepping up, he's taking charge, and they are very like hive mentality. Once he does that, the other vampires, they're leaving. They're boot scooting, boogieing, gone for the day. So literally, because the sun's coming up. So they're done. Their carnage and time of terror is over. And now we see Eben and Stella sitting, watching the sun come up as Eben turns into dust and kind of blows away. So the ending is a little bit like cliche and cheesy, But that being said, this movie is jam-packed with gruesomeness, gore, and just it provokes. It provokes a lot of intense feelings and emotions on a level that I really wasn't even prepared for. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to watch vampires. I remember that from this movie. And I'm going to watch some gruesomeness. I'm going to watch some murder, death, kill. It's going to be great. And then I sat there going, oh my God, this is really hitting me hard. I'm like, the dogs are dead. Now they're dead. And now grandma's gone and I'm chopping off a friend's head. And I mean, it just so much carnage, and it's such a small community that you're relating on a level of just thinking that, I mean, just it's you and everyone you know, everybody else is dead, and you probably had a hand in killing them. I mean, it's just like, oh, it hits you. So, is this one worth seeing, worth watching? Is it worth revisiting this blast from the past? Hells yes it is. Yes it is. This one ages like a fine wine. I think it's even better today. I don't know if it's because I'm more mature and I'm looking at it a different way than when I was 17 years ago, but it doesn't disappoint. It brings gore even to the standards of today. And man, I was blown away. I saw things this time that I might have missed last time on a gore level, because I think I just appreciate that stuff so much more, like the talent that goes into making that happen on the screen. And I appreciate it. I was all about this film. I loved it. And man, I wish I was seeing it on the big screen. It is an oldie, but absolutely a goodie, and it is 1000% still watchable, and I think it's one of the best vampire movies out there. This one gets a 4.5 out of 5 in my book. I love, love, love it, and it is exactly what I want to see when I'm thinking of seeing a vampire movie. I will say that I am frustrated with the reviews on this for the most part. You see like subpar reviews or 50% from Rotten Tomatoes, or, you know, oh, it's okay. Okay. What? This is phenomenal. And especially for its time. You could put it in the theater today and it would be better than okay. So, I mean, we've just been consuming so much garbage. I think we don't know what good is anymore. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. I am intrigued. Did you see this movie? Is it on your watch list? Is it one that you liked, you enjoyed? Do you love it as much as I do? It's one of my top favorite vampire movies of all time. And man, I went through the vampire eras, right? I have seen it all. So I know what's okay when it comes to vampires, and this is up there. I enjoy it. Yeah, there's not too much involved with the lore, but that's not the point. So, I don't know. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts. Let me know. And then also, let me know what movies you would like to see done in this series. I'm going to be picking one a week, and we're going to dive into the blasts from the past. Do they hold up? Are they still good today? And do they age like a fine wine? This one sure does. I'm taking a sip. Teeth. Scary teeth. Decent flick show.